Mothra says the Earth belongs to them as much as it does to man. Oh, Godzilla, what terrible language!
Hello, and welcome to Revenge of the Drive-In. Our movies this week are Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, which is the next Godzilla film. What are we at? Is this the fourth one now?
Fifth?
Whatever.
Feels like more than 5, I can tell you that.
And we've got Twice Dead, a film that I didn't really know anything about until I watched it and I looked into it. And it's like, okay, I know a lot of the people involved with this, but anyways, I am your host, Patrick, and I am joined as usual by
Jim. Hello, everybody.
So, we're starting with Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. This is 1964, the same year as Mothra vs. Godzilla, which was the last Godzilla film that we featured, which, yeah, you're right, this is the fifth one, because we had Godzilla Raids Again, we had King Kong vs. Godzilla, and we had Mothra vs. Godzilla. Is this the best of the five? No. Is it pretty good?
Yeah.
Yes, I'll say so. I don't know your opinions on it, but a few things to say, just kind of as we get into this here, is that what do we got? 4 monsters?
Yes.
Obviously, we got Godzilla. We got Mothra, who is... So if you remember in the last film, there was adult Mothra, and there were 2 little baby Mothras, 2 Mothra larvae, one of which has died in between that film and this film. There's like one line from the fairies. It's like, oh, one of them died, but the other one's doing well. And it's like, oh, okay. We've got Rodan, which this is our first appearance of Rodan, but there was a film called Rodan. It came out, I want to say 1956, so after the first 2 Godzilla movies, but before the original Mothra movie even. And then, of course, we also have the introduction to King Ghidorah, who is awesome. I guess we've got to talk about, first off, the design of these monsters. So at this point, you know what Godzilla is, and at this point, you know what Mothra is, and as a larva, he's basically just a turd.
Yeah, but also, at this point, Godzilla looks a little dumber than cool
that had
older
been,
Godzilla.
That's been going on, I think, in the series. He looks a little bit different every time, and I think they were moving towards... Well, there's a big moment in this film where they very much anthropomorphize him. Mm-hmm. And I think in general, even in the Godzilla costume, they were kind of leaning towards making him more anthropomorphized, less animalistic. I think you really see that in some of the dumber ones from like the late 60s and maybe into the 70s, where his like eyes are like in the front of his face and he just looks like... He looks like, I don't know, he just looks like a Simpsons character or something.
Yeah.
It doesn't look that bad, but I do understand what you're saying. And then Rodan. Rodan is a pterodactyl, basically.
But like a fat pterodactyl.
Well, I don't know. It's because there's someone in the costume. It's a pterodactyl that has to house a fully grown Japanese male. Yeah, Rodan has always... When I was a kid, Rodan was one of my favorites, just because it was one of the most dinosaur-like of them. But really, Rodan kind of sucks as a monster in terms of the fighting sense, because we have never, to this date, we have never gotten a true Godzilla versus Rodan movie, a movie where Rodan is the antagonist, or, you know, maybe the protagonist if Godzilla's the villain or whatever. We have never gotten that, and the reason why is because it would be a 30-second fight, right?
Well, even in this movie, I mean, both Godzilla and Rodan look kind of pathetic at a lot of points when when the two of them are fighting each other. Like, yeah. Godzilla looks pathetic because Rodan's attacks are either kicking in the air or pecking in the air.
Sure.
And then when Godzilla falls victim to those attacks, you're like, just swat him away. He's like a big fly.
Or breathe your atomic breath.
Yeah, and then there's a couple of shots where like Rodan gets knocked down and is like on his back, flailing about, and you're like, oh, he just looks pathetic.
Oh, there's also a scene in this where Godzilla falls down on his back, and that to me is always really funny because, you know, his like spikes, his plates or whatever on his back, whatever they're supposed to be. They're not supposed to be rubber, but whenever the Godzilla costume hits the ground, it does not disguise that well, so that's kind of fun. And then, so we've covered Rodan, and let's also cover Ghidorah now. Ghidorah is basically just a three-headed dragon. No arms, he's got wings, he's beautiful gold.
You said this movie came out the same year as Mothra versus Godzilla?
Yeah. This came out in December, and Mothra vs. Godzilla came out in April. And I'm going by the Japanese release dates of both. And who knows when this was released in the U.S.
At what point does the Japanese public tire of these giant kaiju movies?
It doesn't. They're still making them. Or at least the Godzilla ones, anyways. That is a fair question, though. But I don't know. It's the Japanese giant monster thing. I'm not going to say it's always been popular, because there have been breaks, but they always keep bringing them back. You know, there's a Godzilla film being released this December. Mothra got her own series in the 90s. They brought Gamera back in the 90s. I don't know what it is, unless it's just like we complain in Western films that, we're just like, oh, here's a RoboCop remake. Oh, here's another Indiana Jones movie. It's like, I don't know, maybe this is just Japan's version of that. I don't know.
Japan's version of the superhero phenomenon in
it kind of
Western
is.
society.
And we haven't gotten to it yet, but Godzilla truly is a superhero at a certain point in the series. Now, he's still a bad guy in this movie for most of it. He becomes heroic eventually.
I gotta say, when Godzilla first appeared in this movie, I was like, I know in my head, because I'd never seen this before. I thought, I know Patrick talks about how Godzilla does eventually become the good guy in the series. I wonder if he's good here. He pops up out of the ocean and then immediately explodes a ship. And I'm like, oh, he's not good.
Yeah. I believe the next film in the series, Invasion of the Astro Monster, is the first film in which Godzilla is a good guy from the beginning, but they also, aliens warp his brain and force him to destroy Japanese cities, so he, still becomes a bad guy. I don't know, it's been a while since I've seen that one. That one's a good one. It's a weird one, obviously. The Godzilla series, it gets weird, and you can see that here when we're dealing with otherworldly creatures in Ghidorah, because Ghidorah is a space monster who has completely ransacked the whatever society was existing on Mars, or no, Venus, excuse me. Also, a big thing with the Godzilla movies, what makes a good Godzilla movie, or what makes a Godzilla movie kind of stand out to me, because all Godzilla movies are going to have rubber costume monster fights, and those are going to be fun if schlocky, right? Mm-hmm. But a lot of the best Godzilla movies, they at least give you something with the human characters. Maybe not interesting characters, but at least some kind of intriguing plot going on. And I think the best example is Mothra vs. Godzilla, which has the evil businessman with the Hitler mustache trying to profit off the Mothra egg. That's awesome. This movie gives us something kind of like that, though. The plot is really weird, but it was interesting to me.
This was a movie where I was kind of like, why?
A little convoluted.
Yeah, it was definitely a little convoluted. There was a fair amount of characters and schemes and side schemes. It all just kind of led to what you wanted to see anyways, which was monsters fighting each other. But you could have had the monsters fighting each other without any of that going on. You
could have, but I don't know. I think this stuff is kind of necessary. Unless we hit a point where, I don't know what it is, but this is something that so many Godzilla movies have gotten wrong. The American Godzilla movies, for the most part, have given us nothing interesting with the human characters. There's some tacky husband and wife plot in the 2014 Godzilla, and then there's Matthew Broderick running over people in a car in the 98 one.
Yeah.
And it's just they can never get it right. But I don't know. I think what I like about this plot is that it's intriguing, it's different, and it kind of has nothing to do with the monsters. It's just a fun little action spy movie kind of thing. It felt a couple things. It felt a little, and I mean a tiny bit film noirish, just a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then it also felt a little James Bondy, which makes a little bit of sense given when this comes out. The James Bond series is as big as it's ever been, really. Those first few movies were huge. And then also I know, like, James Bond movies were being emulated all throughout the globe, but Japan was one of the first countries to really lean into that, like, spy-fi type thing. Now, there's no gadgets. I mean, it's different, but there's a little bit of that, like, okay, assassin plot thing. I don't know. I felt a little bit of a Bond influence.
Yeah, I mean...
And by the way...
Oh, yeah.
We have a Bond girl in this film.
Is it...
Akiko Wakabayashi, who plays Aki in You Only Live Twice, which is a movie, Jim, that you and I just recently watched because that was our September commentary track on our Patreon. So check us out at patreon.com/Revenge of the Drive-In to listen to that. But yeah, so it's interesting because Kissy Suzuki in that movie is played by Mia Hama, who is in King Kong vs. Godzilla. And then here we got Akiko Wakabayashi. So, I don't know, maybe there just aren't that many actors in Japan. And there's going to be crossover with it if you ever have a Japanese actor in a James Bond movie. I don't know. Maybe it's less so the Japanese acting pool to pull from. Maybe it's more Toho. Because we got Takashi Shimura in this movie yet again. This is like the third or fourth Godzilla movie he's in. He plays the psychiatrist guy. He's the paleontologist in the original one. And so he's like a different character. And they just don't care. It's just like, we like this guy. Let's put him in a movie. We already saw that with the lead actor in Mothra vs. Godzilla was also kind of the lead actor in the original Godzilla. Different character. Doesn't matter. Continuity, at least among the human characters, human cast, doesn't matter. We have some continuity with the monsters, which is kind of nice. Because where does Godzilla emerge from in this one?
Just the ocean, doesn't he?
Yeah, just the ocean. And the last we saw, I think Mothra kind of forced him out to sea. So there's some consistency there. And then Mothra still being a larva makes sense, although I don't know what happened to the other one. They just say she died, which is great.
Rodan came out of Mount Aso. Like a volcano, which I kind of liked.
Rodan, this brown creature, just emerged from Mount Mount Aso.
Yeah.
This is confusing to me, and maybe it wouldn't be confusing if I knew Japanese geography better. 3 different mountains are prominently featured in the film. Mm-hmm. There's Mount Aso, which is where Rodan comes from, and we get Ghidorah shows up at a mountain somewhere. Ghidorah arrives as like a meteorite.
Yeah. I don't remember where that's supposed to be.
But... It's some mountains. Mount Kurodake. I'm probably saying that wrong. Oh, look at this. It was designated as one of the 100 famous Japanese mountains. Is this like official documentation? What is this?
Yeah, look up the 100 famous Japanese mountains.
Well, I don't know if they were listed. It's listed by region, so they're not numbered, which is unfortunate. And then we also get Mount Fuji, which at least Mount Fuji is the recognizable one. It's like the most iconic landmark in the world. It's literally the most photographed thing in the world. I remember hearing that a long time ago, which makes sense because there's 7 billion people in Tokyo, and that's in the background of every picture. So 3 Japanese mountains. I don't know where they are in relation to each other. I know in Mount Fuji, I say it's involved in the plot. Not really. They just kind of go there. It's not really important.
Yeah, because Mount Fuji's Mount Fuji.
Exactly.
The most famous mountain.
Yeah.
I was watching the movie. Maybe it's because I was watching a really bad copy, but were some of the monsters, like, almost animated?
Well, there's a few shots. It's not many. There's a few shots. I know that, like, there's a long shot of where Godzilla is in the background, like, walking to Mount Fuji, and you can tell it's not a costume. They did it either it's animated or it's just like a puppet or something that they're holding. I didn't notice anything with Ghidorah, other than obviously when Ghidorah first emerges, which is a neat little animated effect of like fire. It comes out of like an explosion.
Well, yeah, I was just watching it, and watching Ghidorah's necks flail around. I don't know, I just thought it was animated. It's either a puppet that they're swinging around and then speeding up. Right? Pose.
I don't know about that. And I like the necks, too. I like how uncontrolled the necks appear to be. They kind of just go everywhere.
Yeah, it's kind of scary, to be honest.
Which makes sense, because if you have a guy in the Ghidorah costume, the necks are just, they're not part of it. You know, it's not like he's got his neck in there. So I don't know what. I'm assuming they probably have some strings and they're pulling him around from like above the set. Maybe, I'm not really sure. But I love there's something like it's a very fluid motion of the necks of the three necks, and it's awkward and weird, and it doesn't look like Ghidorah knows what he's doing, but it makes for like a unique way of motion that I actually like.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of a scary motion, and I think it really suits that evil monster character.
Nothing the screen has ever shown before can surpass the thrills of Ghidorah, the three-headed monster.
Okay, so as for the plot, we've got a brother and sister, we've got Detective Shindo, and we've got Sister Naoko Shindo. She is a reporter, but she's like a reporter for like a National Enquirer. Like, they just publish weird stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not exactly a well-respected publication. We first meet her. She's at a Japanese UFO Society gathering or whatever, and then they blame her that the UFO doesn't show up because she doesn't believe.
Yeah, I love this, yeah.
And then the Detective Shindo, his assignment, and I love this, he is supposed to protect a princess who is coming to Japan unannounced, and she is arriving, she's a foreign princess, I guess, from some fictional country. I know they give the name, I don't remember it. But she is arriving unannounced because there is chaos reigning in her country, and he's supposed to protect her because it is rumored that another heir to the throne is trying to get her killed. And it's odd. So this princess, this is Aki from You Only Live Twice. This is Akiko Wakabayashi, and she's on a plane. They have a plan to blow up the plane, but then she like hears a weird voice in her head that convinces her to jump out of the plane, and you're like, what is going on? And like moments after she jumps out of the plane, it blows up. And then Naoko goes to do a story on some weird like self-proclaimed prophet who's just like preaching in the streets of Japan, and people are like saying, hey, take off your shirt and stuff like that. There was something like that. I don't know. You probably watch a dubbed version, but there was something in the subtitles like, hey, we'd pay more attention to you with your clothes off there. I don't remember what the line was exactly. But
I did watch the dubbed version because it was the only one I could find in Canada. And a lot of the actors put on like a fake Asian voice for the dubbing.
Oh, no.
So it'll be like, oh, look, there's a Mothra. And you're like,
oh, God.
Like, why? Just do your normal voice. What are you doing?
I wonder how much of that, though. I mean, yes, it's funny and it's embarrassing and it's pathetic. I wonder how much of that is just the actors or whoever's organizing the dub. They don't know how to pronounce these monsters' names.
Yeah.
Because, Mothra in Japanese is like Mothra, and Mothra is like the English version. Maybe at this point when they were doing this dub, there wasn't an English version of the name Mothra. Oh,
that's a possibility, yeah.
It could be. And, I mean, Godzilla, Gojira, but Godzilla's been around for 10 years now, so maybe we know how to say Godzilla. But, who knows? I'm assuming they did a Ghidorah. They said it like that because that's how they say it in Japanese.
They would say other words like electricity. They'd be like, oh, electricity out.
Oh, God. That is pathetic.
It's really bad. It's on Tubi.
That's embarrassing.
Yeah.
I need to see that version.
Some of it is really bad. And you're like, ugh.
Yeah.
Where like they're talking to people who are escaping, monsters fighting. And they're like, oh, look out, Godzilla up on the hill behind you. And you're like, why are you saying it like that?
Oh, God. Yeah, that's bad. But yeah, so there's, a meteor shower appears. There's meteors going on everywhere. There's also some talk about how there's just been weird natural phenomena all over, if not the world, at least Japan. They talk about it's winter, but there's like a heat wave. And anyway, so Naoko goes to do a story or to interview this prophetess. She claims to be from the planet Venus. I don't believe she's ever named as a prophet. She just says she's from Venus, and they would refer to her as the Venusian. And I may also refer to her as the princess, because there's a neat scene when Shindo looks at the picture of the prophet in the paper and is like, wait a second, that's the princess. That's the woman who I'm supposed to protect. But wait, her plane blew up. How could she still be alive? So it's interesting. We basically, well, and then I guess the prophet disappears at some point, but basically we've got this brother and sister team who are both trying to track down this woman, but for different reasons entirely. He thinks her life is in danger. Naoko's looking for her because even though she's not that interested by it, her boss really is. And it's like, oh yeah, we need to do more stories on this. I really enjoy the scene of the two of them at home. They live with their mother. I love the interaction between the brother and sister. It feels very natural. Mm-hmm. And then the mother's favorite television program. It's called, what's it called? Like, Where Are They Now or something?
Yeah, I think that's it.
It's, I guess, a show about they bring people on and is like, hey, which celebrity that we haven't seen in years do you really want to see? Or maybe it's not supposed to be celebrities. Maybe it's just supposed to be like, oh, my prom date. No one's heard from her in 15 years or something. But they have these two little kids on there. And they're like, okay, who do you want to see? And they're like, Mothra. And I was like, oh, that's sweet. And then they can't bring out Mothra, but they bring out the fairies. So the twin fairies are still around. And this is when they mentioned, oh, one of the Mothras is dead, but the other one's doing great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they sing the little Mothra song, and we fade into everybody worshiping Mothra on Infant Island, and so everything's good with Mothra. We haven't seen Godzilla in a while, but we've also got a couple people studying this meteorite, which eventually turns out to be Ghidorah. But there's some weird stuff with the meteorite. It's magnetic, which I think is a really neat effect when you see like the pickaxes just like sliding towards it.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess so what are the prophets? What are her warnings? She tells everybody that they need to stay away from Mount Aso. And she also says the world's going to be destroyed, but specifically like Mount Aso, or Aso, whatever, you need to get away from there. And that's, of course, where Rodan is.
And then she also says, don't go on that boat.
Yes, that comes later. Yeah. But yeah, that's so the scene where Rodan emerges from the mountain is pretty fun because it's someone loses a hat.
Yeah.
and then this like sleazy, probably like homeless guy or just like kind of poor guy is like, here, I will go get your hat for you, but you'll have to pay me. And they like negotiate price for like a while. The scene's like kind of long for just like this is just going to be the guy down there that discovers Rodan, right? But yeah, so he goes down there. Rodan shows up. Rodan, when he flies, doesn't flap his wings too often because he's, it's hard to do that with the effect. But when he flies over stuff, it kind of just blows over.
Yeah, it looks almost like those atomic bomb tests in New Mexico. Footage from that, Maybe
if you really squint. I don't know about that, but Rodan, Rodan's fun. Rodan's fine, but not as magnificent as you might be expecting. If you saw the recent Godzilla King of the Monsters movie,
came out in
2019, Rodan is in that, and Rodan completely devastates Mexico City just by like flying over it, and like buildings topple and like there's chaos everywhere. This is not. We don't have the budget for that. It doesn't look quite as good as that, but yeah. So the next big warning, don't go on this boat. They're going to take the ferries back to Infant Island, and the Venus prophet shows up and says, hey, don't go on here. You're all going to die. And so Naoko takes the ferries and the prophet, and they don't go on the ship. And the ship, which was headed back to Infant Island, they are the ones that run into Godzilla, and Godzilla destroys them. So this Venus prophet appears to have something going on, some kind of magical abilities, but they also think she's crazy, and eventually when we get both Naoko and Shindo involved, they eventually take her to like a psychiatrist, which is the Takashi Shimura guy. And but before we get that, we get the people from her home country that show up in order to assassinate her. Now, my favorite thing about this society that we see very little of and we don't really know much about, my favorite thing about the society is that they have some people dressed like William Shakespeare. You know what I'm talking about? There's like exactly a couple like officials. Yeah. Now the people that show up, like the gangsters, the assassins, whoever they are, they just dress like normal people. They're just in suits. But There's a couple scenes over at, well, there's one on the plane before the plane blows up, and then also there's like a scene back at the home country where they discover that she's still alive and is disguising herself as a prophet for some reason. And there's guys with like those big ruffly collars, and they look like William Shakespeare. It's like two people are dressed like that. I think,
well, and like the guy who's on the plane, who's like a senior servant, he's like all bent over and like hunched over, and he just looks miserable in
like
his
Gollum.
Shakespearean outfit.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, so that's fun, that little society. So they eventually, so there's a bit of a shootout. There's a hotel where the assassins spot her. She doesn't seem to recognize them, and eventually they break into the hotel room as Naoko and Shindo are speaking, and they're like ready to torture her, but it really does seem like she doesn't know who they are. And then the fairies warn Shindo when he gets back to the hotel room, and there's a shootout. The assassins get away, and they take the Venus prophet to the psychiatrist, who does some tests on her, finds that she's not crazy, but they can get more information out of her if they give her like a truth serum. But yeah, so when they are questioning her with the truth serum or the hypnosis or whatever, she says, I am from Venus. I am however many hundreds of years old. Our society was wiped out by Ghidorah. Ghidorah is now here and is going to wipe out Earth. You guys are going to have the same fate as us. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't really tell them what to do. She's just like...
Yeah, she's just like, you need to be careful of Ghidorah. That's it.
So I guess the princess she's just possessed by this... Well, I think they say something about this. Venus spirit doesn't have a body. She's just been like existing in the ethereal plane for like hundreds of years. So I guess she just possesses the princess.
So there was like no explanation.
Yeah, no, that's like as much an explanation as we get, which is fine, because I always appreciate movies and media that actually treats alien life as if it's alien, like we can't really understand it. Mm-hmm. The worst aliens, and Jim, this might hurt, but the worst aliens in the world are Star Trek aliens, where they just show up with stuff glued to their faces, but they're otherwise human, you know? Those are the laziest aliens.
Yeah, well, Star Trek
aliens. Or aliens that are just monsters, which we've seen plenty of that. And I guess that's kind of what Ghidorah is, but Ghidorah is at least an interesting monster.
I agree. And, well, yeah, listen, let's backtrack for a second to the Star Trek thing. As an aside, it's a shame because Star Trek does real proper aliens that we can't understand.
They do that a few times. They do, but
then
like
most of them are
the aliens that people remember from Star Trek, the Romulans, the Klingons.
Yeah, well then, like if you watch like the original series, right? Like the Klingons are brown face, are people in brown.
Oh yeah,
face.
Oh it's terrible. I know we've talked about that before, but yeah, if you're listening and you're not too familiar with the original Star Trek, you've only seen the movies or maybe the newer movies, they clean up the looks of the Klingons in like every version of Star Trek, and they keep looking less offensive. But yeah, original Klingons were just in blackface.
Yeah.
Did you know that Justin Trudeau played the first ever on-screen Klingon?
Proud to have him as my prime minister. After knowing that, thank you.
Okay, so at some point, Ghidorah gets free, and Ghidorah also flies like Rodan. There's a pretty cool scene where he like lands at like a Japanese temple or something, and he takes that out because all three heads, they shoot out like, you know, Godzilla's got the atomic breath. Ghidorah, it's like streams of electricity coming from his three mouths. It's a little bit different. It is, yeah, and it's a weaker beam. It's a thinner beam. But we still see what it does, and it's more or less the same effect.
Yeah, I mean, it's still ripping up houses and stuff, you know. There's lots of great shots of Ghidorah flying over cities, or at least a city, and just tearing it up with his lightning breath.
Yeah. So we also have Godzilla and Rodan are making their way to Mount Fuji for whatever reason. And Rodan every now and then swoops down and pecks at Godzilla or kicks him, and Godzilla, for whatever reason, is somewhat defenseless. Yeah. But this also leads us to the next assassination attempt. The assassins sneak into the psychiatrist's lab, and they're going to, like, jolt her. They turn the electricity up all the way to 11 or whatever electricity thing that is.
Yeah.
her life support. They're gonna just zap her. And they're gonna it's like what the Kennedys did to their daughter. They're just gonna lobotomize her basically. And it's like going to kill her. The other guys don't even know the assassins are here yet. But then Godzilla, fortunately, takes out the power grid, and everybody is safe. And then the assassins are spotted. There's more of a shootout, and it's kind of a fun scene. But the assassins get away in a car, and at this point, that entire city, wherever this is, it's near Mount Fuji. They are all being evacuated, but the roads get blocked, and so people have to evacuate on foot. And, the roads get blocked because the assassins are trying to drive through all these roadblocks. And then I think this is Ghidorah. Ghidorah flies by and a bunch of rocks fall on them.
Yeah, it crushes
killing all except for the main assassin guy who gets out of the car and just kind of stumbles around for a while, but we'll see him later.
And then as as all these people are hiking on foot through the hills, you have people with bad Japanese accents saying, "Oh, look out!"
Well, you have
over
that.
there.
I have people with good Japanese accents.
Yeah, that's true.
A lot of Godzilla movies seem to do this, where this is where we've got the monsters fighting, but we still need to kind of pay attention to the humans. So what it is all of our main characters just kind of gather on the hill and watch. But I guess first off, the government was meeting. They're worried about Ghidorah, they're worried about all three monsters really, but the government consulted the twin fairies. And the fairies say basically the only thing you can do about Ghidorah, because they also spoke to the Venus princess person who's Ghidorah's going to wipe you guys out. So the fairies are like, there's no way Godzilla himself is strong enough to take down Ghidorah. There's no way Mothra herself is strong enough. There's no way Rodan is strong enough. But if we could maybe get Mothra to convince the others to fight, then they might have a chance. And at this point, Mothra's not even ready to fight. They have to basically beg Mothra for their help. Which they do. They have no problem doing that. They sing a song. Mothra shows up. And so we get to the scene, the aforementioned anthropomorphized scene, where Mothra has to convince Godzilla and Rodan to join them. She interrupts them. Godzilla throws a lot of rocks, kicks a lot of rocks around.
Dude, okay, before you say anything else, this scene was ridiculous.
It's amusing. I'm trying to be positive. It's amusing.
It's like they're playing tennis with a boulder.
Yeah, he's just throwing it, and it's funny too, because when Rodan throws a rock, it's then you cut back to the Godzilla costume swinging at the rock that's coming at him, and the guy in the Godzilla costume can't see a thing, so it's just awkward. And it's wonderful. I mean, for the most part, this film takes itself seriously as a Godzilla film. We're not into that full schlock. But this scene certainly is the closest we get to that, because not only is the fighting kind of ridiculous, but then when Mothra tries to talk to them, and then we have the fairies, again, going back to our characters, the psychiatrist, Shindo, Naoko, the princess, and the fairies are just all on this hill watching. Isn't the scientist who had been studying the Ghidorah meteor, I think he might be there too?
I think so, yeah.
The fairies are translating what Mothra is saying and what Godzilla is saying, which is weird that all the stuff happens. And now I know I did not watch the dub version, but in my opinion, this is the most famous dub moment in the series, when Godzilla supposedly swears. And the fairies, I remember in the dub version, they go, "Oh, Godzilla, what terror language?" And it's just what the fuck?
Yeah.
That's not English. That's not, it's just weird. So that is, I am familiar with that line. But yeah, here, it's, in the subtitles, it's done a little bit classier, but Mothra is trying to convince them to fight. And there's actually some, that I kind of like, Godzilla and Rodan. And as silly as this is, because these guys are both monsters, and it's okay, they're talking, but they're basically nah, we don't need to save the Earth. What has the Earth done for us? They treat us they hate us, they treat us like monsters, they attack us with their military, and it's yeah, you know what, they've got a point. I kind of like that.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I like that there's, at this point, Godzilla has every opportunity to become a hero, and he's just it's not fucking worth it.
Yeah,
These people hate me.
But it's also on him, too. And again, like, when I was watching this, I was like, yeah, like, I get it. But it's also on him. He's the one who woke up.
Are you saying he's a hypocrite? Godzilla's a hypocrite?
No, but I mean, like, he woke up out of the ocean, and the first thing he did was blow up a ship that was not doing anything to him. It was just sailing, you know?
He was polluting the water, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe that's it. But I do like in this scene where Mothra's spraying silk.
Oh, yeah, and then they laugh at each other.
Yeah.
Because Mothra's got the Spider-Man power, right? Sprays like a web or something, and it's like covering up Godzilla, and then Rodan like literally laughs at him, and then she sprays at Mothra, and then Godzilla, it's like a hearty belly laugh where he like crouches down, basically slaps his knee.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't literally do that, but he may as well. It's amusing, and this is so the Godzilla movies, you know, eventually, obviously, we talked about it, Godzilla becomes a hero. We also get, just in general, and we mentioned the look of Godzilla, how it becomes a bit less monstrous as the series goes on, but the more they give him, like, human characteristics, the more it's like, okay, yeah, we're making these movies for kids now, and, you know, it's just like, this always happens in long-running series. Godzilla's been going on for 10 years. You're kind of losing the power of that metaphor for nuclear destruction. So what do? He's just a superhero.
Make it for kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's a giant monster. Kids always liked these movies, probably. Like, it was probably bound to happen. And you know, the big, I don't want to say rival, but the other giant monster series that actually I think hasn't happened at this point. I think the first Gamera movie is 65, but Gamera is like a superhero from the beginning. Gamera's friend to children. Oh. You know, he's like, so I don't know. But yeah, you know, kids like their monsters. Kids like monster movies. Kids like a lot of stuff that a lot of times adults don't get that they like it or don't think that they should like it. No, kids like RoboCop. Kids like, you know, if they have the chance to see it, like anything. Kids like anything that's like kind of fun and stupid and
anything
action-packed
that's loud and bright flashing lights and colors. And...
Exactly, yeah. Kids like Power Rangers. Kids like Pokemon. I was literally about to
bring up the Power Rangers, actually, because...
Yeah, well, I mean, there's comparisons to be drawn, because Power Rangers, known for its awkward costume fights, exactly. Of course, yes.
I was about to say, this is the first Godzilla movie that I've seen that I thought, wow, this reminds me a lot of Power Rangers.
Okay.
But I also...
It's probably fair. I'm not super familiar with the Power Rangers. I mean, I know what they are. I don't think I've ever... Maybe when I was like a 3-year-old kid.
There were like mech fights and stuff like that, and they're fighting.
Neck fights? You know? Like, a neck fight?
They turn into a giant mech, and they fight...
Oh, mech. I thought you said neck.
Oh, no.
Like Ghidorah's 3 necks. I don't know.
I will say that one of my favorite scenes, it was so stupid, but I just really liked it in this movie, is when Rodan dropped Godzilla on the
oh, yeah, that's...
on the pylon.
Yeah, I think that's where they lose the power, isn't it, maybe? Yeah, because Rodan picks up Godzilla and drops him, and he falls dick first onto
I know, and
big power
I yelled
line.
at the TV. I was like, oh my god, look out.
There's a couple, possibly coincidental, there's a couple hit in the crotch moments in this movie, because Ghidorah's like zapping Godzilla, and he zaps him in the stomach, then he moves lower, and he's getting towards the groin region. I don't know what that's supposed to be. If it's supposed to be like a... stupid Adam Sandler joke, or if it's just like on accident. It's like, oh, that's kind of what it ended up looking like. I don't know, but I appreciated it. So the point of this scene is that Mothra is ultimately unable to convince these monsters to gang up and fight Ghidorah. So Mothra slinks away on her lonesome to go fight him, and this is great because Mothra, again, larva, baby, utterly useless in a fight, basically. Although, I mean, not technically, because the Mothra babies helped take out Godzilla in the previous film. But again, Ghidorah is much more powerful than Godzilla. That's been established. And also one Mothra, because the other one died, rather than 2. These were the biggest laughs of the movie. So the scene with Godzilla and Rodan laughing at each other, it's kind of funny. It's meant to be funny. This scene, I don't know if it's meant to be funny, but... when Ghidorah, like, zaps Mothra, and Mothra just, like, flies into the air.
I love that. I love it.
It happens, like, 3 or 4 times, and it's funny every time. It's just, like, I pictured someone, her being on one end of, like, a seesaw, and someone, like, jumps on the other end and just goes, woo, up in the air.
Well, it's literally
great.
Like an adult kicking the shit out of a baby.
It is, yeah. And that's wonderful. And again, this is great for in so much as these monsters have characters, because at this point, at least in this movie, they do. This is about the Mothra character, just ultimate hero. Like, I don't have a chance in hell in this fight, but I'm still gonna do my best to protect the Earth, because Ghidorah, he takes out Japan, big deal, but, Infant Island's gonna be taken down too, so I gotta do something.
Well, then I love how Godzilla kind of shows up and kind of protects Mothra, right? And then later, Godzilla gives Mothra his tail, and Mothra just bites onto it, and he hauls Mothra.
Yeah, we eventually get some tag team fighting, which is classic stuff, and this is what you hope for in any kind of group monster fight, as long as it's like 2-on-1, 3-on-1, 2-on-2, whatever. You need some of these moments, and there's some good ones. The best, God, I think it's Godzilla versus Megalon. There's a scene where Godzilla throws a monster up, Jet Jaguar. You probably don't even know who Jet Jaguar is.
Yeah.
Look up Jet Jaguar, something straight out of the Power Rangers. But Jet Jaguar throws a monster up into the air, and Godzilla blasts him from this. Like, it's just like there's some really fun stuff in, like, the tag team stuff. They do this in some of the, like, Avengers type movies, like the team up. So, anyways, as you mentioned, Godzilla and Rodan join the fray, and they basically just join because they see Mothra just getting the shit kicked out of her, and I think Mothra's heroism has inspired them in some way. So they gear up to fight Ghidorah. Rodan obviously did some, like, charging him from the sky, kind of jumps on his heads, I think. Godzilla, there's more rock throwing, because that's his big move in this movie for whatever reason. Yeah, we get some tag team stuff because Mothra grabs onto Godzilla's tail. What do they do with that? Oh, no, that's not so much a tag team. That's, like, for purpose of travel.
Yes, yeah.
That's, like, because Godzilla can walk faster than Mothra,
so Mothra
humping the ground.
Yeah, so Mothra just bites onto Godzilla's tail, and Godzilla drags her around.
Yeah, but there is something, I think there's a tag team where, like, Rodan grabs Mothra and, like, doesn't he take her to, like, Ghidorah height to, like, easier spray him with Spider-Man stuff?
Yeah, I think so, right?
There's something like that. But yeah, so the fight, it's a true team fight. It's like all 3 of them are responsible for taking down Ghidorah. Ghidorah...
This is the Avengers of the Godzilla cinematic universe, or the first.
No, it's not. This is... The real Avengers is Destroy All Monsters, because that's, like, every monster in the series at this point, including some that basically just have cameos. But no, that fight scene is awesome. Because this movie, it's 3 monsters against Ghidorah, and they win. In Destroy All Monsters, it's like 8 monsters against Godzilla, so they kick the absolute shit out of him. There's, like, stomping on his necks. Minya, Godzilla's son, blows a smoke ring that, like, chokes one of the Ghidorah heads. It's utterly ridiculous. But yeah, this is a hint of things to come, I guess, in this series, really. But yeah, so Ghidorah kind of just flees back to outer space to go wreck Mercury or something, who knows. So our monsters are heroic. The Twin Fairies, I guess, return to Infant Island with Mothra, and we see, like, a... Oh god, I've missed all of this. So during this fight, we also have cutaways to the princess being nearly assassinated, because that one assassin shoots her in the face, but only grazes her, and then Detective Shindo kind of saves her life. And at this point, she's, like, regaining her memory. She's like, who are you? Like, what's going on? And I think the assassin just gets killed from another rock slide, doesn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so at the end of the movie, they have, like, a press conference, and they're talking to the princess. And they're like, hey, when you said you were from Venus, what was up with that? And she's like, oh, I have no memory of this. But then she does somehow remember Detective Shindo, and she's like, hey, you saved my life multiple times. I am forever grateful.
Continuity. Wrong.
No, maybe she gets glimpses of her life when she's being possessed. That's fine. It's not. You don't put that in the goof section on IMDb. That's fine.
Goof section.
That's what it's called, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah. Is it, or mistakes? Maybe.
I think it's goofs. It could be
goofs.
errors. That is pretty much the end of the movie, right? There's like, is this how Avengers can this be with no end credit scene? But that is the movie. Godzilla, as I mentioned, will be a hero at the beginning of the next film. So this is the turning point for Godzilla as a character, I guess. And so, Jim, what did you think of Ghidorah, the three-headed monster?
I liked it more than I thought I was going to. Well, it really didn't take itself seriously, and I like that. And I think if you're going to make a movie where one of your main characters is a man in a dinosaur costume, and another man in a flying dinosaur costume, and a man on the ground in a larva costume.
Actually, no. One thing I wanted to point out. I don't think Mothra is a person.
Oh, I think Mothra is a person.
I'm looking at Wikipedia, and they list the cast, and it has Haruo Nakajima as Godzilla, Masanori Shinohara as Rodan, Shoichi Hirose as King Ghidorah. There's no Mothra listed. I think Mothra might just be awkward puppetry the entire time. I'm not really sure.
I've found that Katsumi Tezuka portrayed the Mothra larva prop that was also recycled from Mothra versus Godzilla. So you're right. It's probably just a puppet. Anyways, a movie like this, you can't take it too seriously. I mean, this is kind of like a modern-day superhero movie where you go in and just to watch, just to hang out, watch it, eat popcorn, have fun. With all the dumb things that were happening in it, I was just going along for the ride, man. I really enjoyed it. And I do want to see Godzilla become the good guy. Like, properly become the good guy?
Yeah, because he's heroic at the end of this movie, but he's not. Like, it is different than Mothra versus Godzilla. Mothra's the good guy the entire time, and then when the Mothras defeat Godzilla, it's like, oh yeah, awesome. Like, you were rooting against Godzilla in that movie.
Yeah.
You don't quite do that here, because Godzilla's main rival is Rodan, and it's like, okay, I have no reason to root for Rodan, and then eventually Godzilla becomes heroic, obviously, but... yeah, this is a little different than we've seen Godzilla so far in the series.
And, and I think I'm liking it. I'm liking the series. I'm liking how goofy it's getting. Yeah, that's it, really. How about you?
Well, I enjoyed the movie quite a bit. It sounds like I took the movie more seriously than you did, although obviously the film has its flourishes in the goofiness.
I like how you're like, oh, I took the movie more seriously.
No, I did, though. Ghidorah is like a serious world-ending threat, and I like how that's established. It's established through an alien possessing a princess who just... It's so weird. I like the weirdness of it. It's not just that the alien possesses a person to deliver this message. The alien possesses the most wanted person on Earth to convey this message, so there's people constantly trying to kill her. I think that's great. I like the James Bond assassin quality, whatever you want to call that. But Ghidorah as like this, Ghidorah, first of all, design, awesome monster. And as like a villain, I kind of wish we saw more of him. Mm-hmm. I think Ghidorah isn't as strong as he might be. I think maybe because we spend too much time on Rodan. Yeah. And Rodan is never really... Rodan's a monster. I guess it's a threat. But Rodan is certainly not the threat that Ghidorah is. Godzilla's not even a threat to humanity that Ghidorah is. But also, like, we certainly don't see enough to think that Rodan is equally dangerous as Godzilla. Like, he just kind of flies around and pokes him in the eyes a few times. Yeah. But yeah, so I think... I like Rodan as a creature. But I actually think the movie might have been better if it was just Godzilla, Mothra, and Ghidorah, and you get a little bit more. You could focus a little bit more on Ghidorah. Another scene of him, because they have the scene when they're in the diet building, which is their parliament or whatever, and they're talking to the fairies, and they have that like warning. Oh, Ghidorah is coming! Ghidorah is coming! I want to see him stomp on that shit. We already saw King Kong fall asleep on top of the diet building. Like, I want to see Ghidorah just like fly through that or something. I think we could have had some more destruction. Would have been nice. But I like Ghidorah as this like threat. I like the heroic turn for Godzilla. I like that at first he's like, nah, you know. I mean, it was as weird as it is that Godzilla has like coherent thoughts as he's just a creature, he's an animal, but he's just like, nah, Earth doesn't, you know, we don't need to like that. That's silly. Yeah. But I also like it because I like that heroic turn means something. When he sees Ghidorah basically just bullying on this poor little baby, that's when he decides to step in. I like that.
Yeah,
I like this. I like
his
this movie
fatherly
quite a bit.
instinct kicking in. You know. Well, you know, if I had one complaint, and again, it's not really a complaint about this because I really did enjoy the movie, but for me, there was too much like interpersonal stuff between just like people. But I know you enjoyed a lot of that. But for me,
I thought it was well done. I liked the performances. I liked the brother-sister dynamic. I thought they felt like actual brother-sister. I thought they were fun. I thought each character, that they had different things that they were trying to accomplish, but they were obviously related. I thought that was good.
You see, I think, like, for me, the perfect Godzilla movie so far, because this is the most Godzilla movies I've ever seen in my life, doing this podcast, but I think was the first Godzilla.
Well, also, come to think of it, we established this is the fifth Godzilla film It is the fifth Godzilla film in the series. It's also the sixth one we've done for the podcast, because we did the 98 Godzilla. We did Matthew Broderick and Jean Reno doing an Elvis Presley impersonation. We did that movie for whatever that's worth. It's not worth much. But yeah, so sorry, I just thought of that. But
well, no, you're right though. But
yeah,
I mean,
go back to what you were saying. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Well, no, that's okay. But I mean, yeah, it's just like for me, that was like the perfect amount of
the original.
Yeah, of like people-centered drama in this monster story, because it was about a monster emerging, you know, from the ocean and how society was dealing with it.
Now, that movie, it had human characters, and it had pretty good human characters as far as human characters in a giant monster movie go, but there was no bullshit in that movie.
There was no fluff.
There was no fluff. The human drama of that movie came down to, can we convince this crazy scientist who's missing an eye to help us kill Godzilla when his invention could also lead to horrible things in the world? Like that was like kind of it. And here's the thing though. I agree, that's perfect. But guess what? That movie as a whole is almost perfect. That is, the original Godzilla is one of the greatest movies ever made. This movie is not that. Obviously, you've mentioned the Avengers. We've both mentioned the Avengers at times. It's like, imagine, I'm trying to think of a comparison. Let's say we take The Godfather. Godfather, one of the greatest films ever made. Mm-hmm. And then let's say we do an Avengers where we've got Luca Brasi from The Godfather, Tommy DeVito from Goodfellas, and like Frank Serpico is involved. and it's going to be dumb schlock, but like you might have some fun stuff in there because you'll at least be able to see these characters that I like in these settings, and now we give them different settings to interact in, and it's not a great comparison, don't get me wrong, but I kind of want to see that movie. If someone were making a Godfather Avengers where it's like Tony Soprano is like head of a family that's got Joe Pesci from Goodfellas in it and James Caan from The Godfather, like, you would watch that movie, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly, yeah.
It would be terrible probably, but it would be fun.
Yeah, but I'd watch it for sure.
Exactly. They're all fighting the Peaky Blinders guys or whatever. I don't know. What gang would they fight? Maybe the Yakuza, like you take a Yakuza cool. from the Battles Without Honor and Humanity series really cool. or something.
Well, see, and
No, they fight Daniel Day-Lewis from Gangs of New York. He's the Thanos. He's the Thanos.
But like with this movie though, it's okay for it to be goofy. But, like, I don't need all the fat where, like, oh, I've lost my hat in this volcano. I'll get it for $200.
That's like a just... No, okay. There's fat in this movie. the guy going to get the hat is not is not the best example, because that is just, I agree, it goes on a little long because he's just like the negotiating, but that is ultimately just there to show Rodan emerging amidst people. Like,
this might just be my version because I watched the crappier version. In this version, they'll run into somebody and they're like, "Oh, be careful! There's a monster over there." And they're like, "Oh, thank you for letting us know. Me and my 2 children were just on our way home from the store, and lightning kept falling from." And you're like, "Shut the fuck up! What is happening?"
I don't think I got any of that stuff in my version. There was no like unnecessary detail with like people running from the monsters. I don't think.
Yeah, I feel like there's a bit in mine, and I'm just like, get rid of it. But yeah, I mean, like, other than that, I mean, and again, comparing it to the original Godzilla is not fair to this movie, but all in all,
it's not fair for most movies.
But all in all, I did like this movie a lot.
I mean, yeah, I liked it too. I mean, here's the question. Is this your favorite Japanese film we've done this season so far?
Is this the... Oh, no, we did one the other day, didn't we? What's the other Japanese film that we did?
It's Battle Royale, Jesus.
Oh, that was it. I think
the movie that you covered?
Yeah, that's right. Listen, dude, I've been working a lot lately and not sleeping very well.
Not at this, obviously.
Yeah, that's true. You prick. I think, you know what? I don't know. I really liked Battle Royale. Well, I didn't really. I might go with this. I might go with this over Battle Royale, if I'm honest.
I would put the 2 films pretty close. I think I might kind of slightly prefer Battle Royale. In terms of the amount of enjoyment I got out of them, it is pretty close. Also, I've just looked. I count 5 more Japanese films coming this season. There could be more. There's like a title on here that I don't really know. There are a couple titles. It's like, that might be a Japanese movie.
Are we gonna have a new awards?
I have thought about doing an award for
best
foreign film. Because we're doing Hong Kong stuff, and we already did an Italian film in Inferno. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we've got enough this season to do a best foreign film award. That's something I kind of wanted to do last year, but like we only did like 5. It would have been a bit of a stretch. It would have been possible, but it's like, do we count Urban Legend because that's a Canadian movie? Like, you know, yeah, and it's not even foreign for one of us, first of all. But we'll discuss that. Yeah. Well, anyways, Jim, you want to start with Twice Dead?
This movie opens up with a pervert.
This is a rapey movie.
It's a very rapey movie. We're introduced to Tyler Walker, an actor, and this is like the 1930s. And this is
he's got like a Clark Gable mustache kind of look.
And this has got to be like right after the Great Depression, because there's like a throwaway line where they say something. They're like, "Oh, people have been killing themselves after the crash."
No, but they're just referring to Matthew Broderick crashing into those 2 people in Northern Ireland now. This movie came out in '88. It's not long after the Matthew Broderick car accident. Can we talk about some of the and maybe you don't know, but a lot of like familiar people involved in this movie, a lot of names.
I didn't recognize a single name.
You didn't recognize the actor that we covered in a film like 2 weeks ago?
Oh wait, hold on. No.
The guy who the Jonathan Chapin, who plays Crip, kind of our main villain.
Oh.
His IMDb photo is him getting the garden tool in the face. He's Michael in, not Michael Myers, but he's Mikey in Halloween 5. So we get him.
And then I also know Charlie Spradling.
Charlie Spradling from Puppet Master 2, a wonderful scene with her, who I didn't recognize this guy, but her boyfriend in the movie. Yeah, I've never seen this guy this young, but that's Raymond Cruz, who was like the bad guy in the first season or 2 of Breaking Bad. He's like one of the meth dealer guys.
The guy in this movie named Silk, is that his name? Like the head of the gang? Christopher Burgard?
No, the guy she has sex with, the guy who gets electrocuted.
Sorry. Oh, yeah, we're talking about Charlie yes.
No, and Christopher Burgard, by the way, as far as I can tell, did the theme song for this movie. So he's like the secondary villain. He also did the theme song, which is pretty good. And then a couple other people. First of all, this is a Roger Corman produced film. We got Brooke Bundy playing the mother. Brooke Bundy is the mother in Nightmare on Elm Street 3, as well as the Nightmare on Elm Street 4. She is Kristen's mother, which means in A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, she is Patricia Arquette's mother. And in A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, she is Tuesday Night's mother, because they recast that actress, because I think Patricia Arquette was pregnant or something. And also, the main woman, the sister, super familiar name. I'm like, Jill Whitlaw, why do I know that name? And I looked her up. She's apparently one of the main characters in Night of the Creeps, which is like a cult classic. But yeah, so a lot of people are surprised at how many people involved in this movie that I was familiar with. You know, Roger Corman.
See, I didn't even know the Roger Corman thing, because
so you did your research.
Well, also because I saw that it was directed by Burt L. Dragon, and I was like, that's not a real name.
Dragon? Yeah, it looks like a fake name. Yeah, who is this guy?
I don't know. But also, this is
the director of Summer Camp Nightmare.
Sure.
That's literally his only other directorial credit. It was before Twice Dead. So Twice Dead killed his career for whatever reason.
His career only died once. You know? I will say, this is a very rare instance for us, because this movie doesn't have a Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
Remember your list? Remember your like Wikipedia tier list or whatever it was?
Yeah, and it works better for actors, but I'd say it qualifies at least a little bit for movies. But for actors, tier 1, Wikipedia page with picture. Tier 2, Wikipedia page no picture. Tier 3, no Wikipedia page. So those are the... I haven't looked at... Jonathan Chapin's probably tier 3. For instance, I don't know if he has a Wikipedia page, but yeah, so movies, it's really just 2 things, but... Well,
listen, I just went onto IMDb when I was watching this the other day, and I read the trivia. Well, listen, there's 8 entries, and they're all very short, and I want to read them to you, because some of them are really good.
Okay.
So, the first one is, I don't know why this is on the list, the fuse box and the dumbwaiter both had to be built for the movie, and the coffin was also specially built for the film.
Oh, so that just says this movie had someone who made props, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Like why is that a trivia fact?
Now, this one I kind of
They built their own coffin? Oh my god, that must have taken years.
Well, listen to this. The film was shot in 6 weeks, so it couldn't have taken that long.
6 weeks is like a respectable amount of time. Like there are good movies that are shot in like less time than that, and good I mean like with budgets and stuff. Because for the record, we haven't gotten into it. Twice Dead's okay, I think. Has its moments.
Yeah, I agree.
It has its strengths. It's not great.
Well, listen, we'll get into it. But you're gonna like this fact. Cast as siblings, Tom Bresnahan, who plays Scott, and Jill Whitlow, who plays Robin, were dating during the production of this movie.
Okay.
Which is kind of, you know...
This movie was directed by Woody Allen.
Tom Bresnahan did almost all of his own stunts. Great fact.
That's interesting phrasing. It's like, what?
I'm saving the most interesting one for last. Some of the scenes shot on location at UCLA were filmed without permits.
Wait, what scenes were even filmed at UCLA? Oh, I guess, okay.
I guess like the library scene, maybe?
Yeah, okay, there's
and
like
the shot of him walking into school at night, you know, because they didn't have permits. 2 neighboring houses were utilized for the family's home. On one side of the street, they shot exteriors, and the interiors were filmed at the house directly across the street, which is kind of interesting.
That's actually, yeah, I don't know why they did that. It's maybe the house that they shot interiors of was like ugly as hell from the outside.
Oh, yeah.
And the house that they shot exteriors of, they're just like, yeah, we're not letting you shoot in here. So I don't know. I have no idea why they did that, but that's kind of neat.
This movie is Charlie Spradling's first nude scene, apparently, according to IMDb.
The first of many.
Thousands.
I looked her up way back when we did Puppet Master 2. She doesn't have a lot of credits as an actress. I think she retired relatively young in like 94 maybe or something. But like, I'm pretty sure she was like nude in like all the movies she did. So like she was a bit of a kind of a Linnea Quigley type. So
yeah, a one-trick pony, and that trick was her tits.
Also, isn't that 2 tricks? The tits.
You're right.
Just to be fair. Absolutely electric scene with her.
So this last piece of trivia is actually interesting, and it's actually trivia. The title song, credited to the band Poor Saint Christopher was written and performed by Christopher Burgard, aka Silk, the gang leader. But the backing vocals for his song were provided by Tom Bresnahan.
Okay.
Who's the film's hero. So I guess they're buddies in real life.
So I wonder if those two guys just like had a band or something. Because Poor Saint Christopher is like a weird name for like a fake band in a movie. Like, because sometimes if you're doing like a title song and it's really just like the guy who did the score, they'll just like kind of make, like the example I think of is Friday the 13th Part 3. They do that awesome disco theme, and it's credited to the band Hot Ice, but Hot Ice isn't a thing, and that's just like Harry Manfredini, and he just chose like a name that sounded like a disco band or something. But Poor Saint Christopher is like so weirdly specific that it sounds like it actually probably was a band, but
it does sound like it's a pretty good name, if I'm honest. Poor Saint Christopher. All that's coming up is German high art from the 1400s and this movie's soundtrack. So maybe they just made it for this movie.
Well, listen, I mean, that might very well have been a band, and they just didn't have anything that's like now exists on Spotify or something. Oh, yeah. They just played a few LA clubs in the day. We might not be able to find record of them. That doesn't necessarily mean they weren't a thing.
Okay, well, let's get back into this movie.
It was a new beginning.
We're almost there, kids.
A move into a nice new neighborhood.
According to the probate report, it was built in 1926.
Where people are friendly.
Hello, Robin Kate.
Neighbors stop by. With a concerned police force.
It has to do with some old actor. Nobody's wanted to live in this place.
A lot of nonsense, really. We haven't heard anything for years.
Just a little fixing up.
The word is that old Tyler place is, spooked.
And it'll be a dream house for nightmares.
So like I said a while ago, we open, it's kind of like the early 30s, I think. There's this guy, Tyler Walker, an actor, and he's really creepy, and we see him dancing with a woman in his house, listening to old-timey 30s music, and he starts undoing the woman's dress, and then he stabs her in the back. And while that's going on, I think his name is Harry Cates. Harry Cates and some police show up to this mansion of a house, and they're busting through the front door because it's now Harry Cates' house. Like, Tyler Walker has somehow lost the deed to his house. When we cut back to Tyler Walker upstairs and he stabs this woman in the back, it turns out it's a mannequin. And there's this mannequin laying on the floor, and Walker has hanged himself. Then we have the Cates family, the modern-day Cates family of the 80s, and they're on their way to move into their Uncle Harry's house, which is the mansion that we just saw.
This takes place in the 80s?
Oh, fuck off.
I wasn't sure with those punks.
Yeah, okay, because, yeah, so...
I thought those guys were from the 40s. I was confused.
Well, yeah, so this...
Those looked like film noir villains. That Peter Lorre was one of them. No.
Well, the Cates family, they rock up to their house, and, like, it's in shambles, right? Like, it's seen better days, but there's a bunch of fucking punks hanging out right in front of the house.
I love that this, by the way, this is an odd touch for this. This is essentially a haunted house movie. And yet, for 90% of the movie, you forget that it's a haunted house movie. And them kicking these squatting punks off their property is the initial incident, basically. This is like, this determines like everything else that happens in the movie. It's like, what? This is about a ghost.
Like, the best thing about this is these punks, like you said, are squatting, and they're asked to leave by the family. And the father's like, son, Scott, he's like, go get my shotgun from the car. His son's kind of humming and hawing about it, and the police show up, and then the police kind of scare the punks off.
Oh yeah, his dad, I forgot about that, because the parents eventually just go away in the movie.
Yeah.
But the dad is like Charles Bronson in Death Wish. He's just like ready to kill at any moment already, yeah. He's like Charles Bronson in Death Wish 2. It's like, this guy's already been killing.
Yeah, well, there's a bit later on where he scares all the punks off by just pumping rounds into the air, and then he shoots like a tree branch above some punk's head.
Yeah. Is this neighborhood completely abandoned? I feel like it has to be, because A, we get shotgun blasts fired in the middle of the neighborhood that no one reacts to, and then later on we get very loud music and a motorcycle inside, and again, no neighbors call the cops or anything.
I know. I don't, like, it's kind of set up in the beginning of the movie that they're moving into a rougher end of town, hence the punks.
But it's also like a nice neighborhood. They're talking about how nice all the houses are.
I know. And how close it is to school, and how it's going to be a nice, quiet place to live. So, I don't know. But these punks, though, by the way, you were kind of right. They look like they're straight out of, like, the like the 50s with, like, leather jackets. And...
No, I was joking. These guys they're the most 80s-looking people ever.
Well...
The motorcycles, the leather jacket, that's like a 50s thing, but it's also an 80s thing.
Yeah, you're right.
You had the rockabilly revival in the 80s, the Stray Cats.
That's true.
And then, like, punks love their leather.
Yeah, well, they've got hair from the 80s, but clothes from the 50s.
They have clothes from the 80s, too, is what I'm saying. Leather's been popular in more than one decade, Jim.
Yeah, well, then the punks, like a Crip, who is played by what's-his-face, who was
Mikey.
Thank you. He whips out a switchblade, like, immediately. He's like, I'm gonna kill you. And he falls in love with Scott's sister, whose name is Robin. And that also...
Is it love?
He falls into extreme lust with Robin.
It's interesting. This character is actually more interesting than you'd think he is, because he is just like a violent asshole punk guy. But when you actually get down to it, he's kind of the most reasonable of all of the punks. But he also really wants to have sex with the sister, so it's just like, okay, it's complicated.
Yeah, well, I think the most reasonable of all the punks is the punk lady, who...
Well, yes, that's true, but yeah,
Silk.
she's like cosplaying as a punk. I feel like she doesn't truly belong, she just happens to be dating one of them or whatever, right?
Yeah. Well, all these punks get scared off by the police, and they're like, fuck you, nice family that's moving in and have come to move into your house that your family owns. Fuck you. We're going to have...
And meanwhile, it's an abandoned neighborhood. They could just take up at any other house in the neighborhood, probably.
Well, later... Well, it's really
stupid. They could take up in the house where they actually shoot the interiors. Or the exteriors, I guess. Well, this is the house that they shoot the exteriors in, so if they just cross the street, then suddenly they live in... It's like, wait, I thought that was their house on the inside. I was like,
I don't feel like bringing this up later, so I'm just going to explain it now. But this is kind of aping off what you just said. In the movie, one of the reasons for them being so drawn to the house is Crip.
That's revealed at, like, the very end.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And it's because he's the illegitimate grandson of the actor
Clark
Tyler
Gable.
Walker and Robin and Scott's great aunt, who Walker was originally in love with, and she left to marry Harry Cates, the guy who took the house.
Yeah.
And Robin is also like a spitting image of her great aunt. So there's just a whole dynamic going on. And also Crip plays Tyler Walker as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, so after all the punks get scared off, the family goes into the house, and again, like, it's in rough shape. There's no electricity, and the family kind of splits up to check out the house. And Scott heads upstairs, and he sees Tyler Walker in the mirror. So that's like the first spooky bit we get. And later that night, when everyone's asleep, Scott wakes up to investigate, like, a thumping sound coming from upstairs. And he goes into, like, I don't understand how this works, but he goes into a room that hasn't been touched since Tyler Walker died in, like, 1930, even though the house was then run as a funeral home for, like, 50 years by Harry Cates, his great uncle. But he goes upstairs, there's a window open, and there's a big, heavy rope noose just, like, swinging in the wind, and it's thumping against the wall.
Can I just say that all of the supernatural haunted house elements of this film fell, like, completely flat for me?
Yeah. I mean, it gets kind of fun later on, but there's nothing
but it's
actually,
fun
spooky.
Because of other elements in the movie, though.
Yeah, I agree. Like, there's nothing actually scary about this. It is kind of like a Disney haunted house sort of thing, you know? Well, Scott also finds this mannequin that was, like, stabbed, you know, like, in the 30s in this closet. He finds a bunch of, like, posters and books pertaining to Tyler Walker. So, also, I wanted to call them the Crips. The gang, the biker gang, whatever they are. You think that they're older than they actually are, but it turns out they're actually all high school age. Because they go to the same high school that Scott and
the fat guy
Robin
really threw me off here.
Yeah.
Like, that guy's in his 30s.
Dude, there's a bit where
I think Crip passes.
Yeah.
And the girls, and Charlie Spradling kind of passes. But yeah, it's that fat guy in the motorcycle. That guy is...
Yeah,
he's working construction somewhere. He's not in high school.
But yeah, they get into, like, a fight at school, and it's when Crip is making passes at Robin, and to escape the biker gang, Robin and Scott steal the fat biker's bike and then drive it to their house. Scott's in bed that night, and a spooky haunted rope snakes its way across his bed and wraps itself around his leg and neck. And he wakes up, and his family comes to his rescue, and they're all like, "Whoa, you must have been pretty restless to tie a rope around your leg and your neck." And he's like, "No, I swear, Dad, it was a ghost."
Again, the supernatural stuff, which I feel like after a certain point just kind of disappears for a good 30, 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But he's what's his name, Scott?
Yeah.
He's the one that's like interested in this. He's researching the history of the house over at the library with his black friend, and
Petey.
And the parents don't give two fucks about the history of the house. Also, hang on, what court date is the family going to?
I have no idea.
What is going on? I don't think they ever say, do they?
No.
They're just like,
no.
"Oh, we have to go out of town this week. The court date is this week." And I think they say something like if they don't show up at court, they're going to lose everything. So is it like foreclosure or something? I don't really know.
All I know is
but
that
they're
they
like
have
going
to go
out
back
of
to
state.
Boulder, Colorado for the court date.
They're gone for like 2 weeks, and that's really when the gang kind of moves in and stakes their claim, if you will.
Yeah. Well, before that, we get this awesome scene. So, like, you've already touched on, like, Scott looking up Tyler Walker in the library and stuff. Also, there's some other, like, spooky things where Robin is in her bedroom, like, getting ready for bed, and then she sees the ghost of Tyler Walker in the mirror holding a knife. But things really start ramping up after that when Robin's cat goes out of the house for some reason, and she wakes up in the middle of the night to look for her cat, and she wanders outside, and it's a great reveal. The door's slowly closing behind her, and her cat's been stabbed to the door, and you think, oh my god, it's a spooky ghost, but it just turns out it's a bunch of these piece of shit punks wearing like Halloween masks. Again, Crip tries to pretty much rape or kidnap Robin, and this is when like the supernatural stuff kind of gets stupid, because Tyler's ghost wakes up Scott. Like, he shakes his bed, and Scott's like, oh, everybody, Robin's gone. He runs out of the house.
The dad's got the shotgun immediately.
Yeah, and the dad runs out and just starts fucking pumping rounds into the air, you know? He's like, get out of here, you fucking punks. I'm gonna kill you, I swear to God. Yeah, so that's all pretty cool. And at this point, we don't know when it happened, but, like, presumably, because Scott's, like, looking into Tyler Walker, he feels some kind of an emotional connection. So after he's been, like, beaten to a pulp, he limps back into the house up to the third floor, and he opens this, like, cupboard with Tyler Walker's stuff in it, and he goes, hey, thanks, Tyler. I appreciate it. And then this is when the parents just disappear. They leave the movie halfway through. Like you said, they're going back for a court date to Colorado. But almost immediately, the kids at home are confronted by the gang. And it's while they're working on this old hearse that was left. And Scott really wants to, like, fix up because he thinks it's cool. And here again, we see that the ghost helps him start the car. Did you catch that? There's like a shot of like the window on the top floor where the ghost is, and then there's a shot looking down to the car, and then the camera just zooms in, and then the car starts. And Scott's like, "Yeah, awesome, woo!" So the ghost is like helping him save his sister, helping him start his new car. Yeah, so the gang shows up, and I guess they're just coming to beat the crap out of the kids and like take back the house. And this just leads to a car chase where Scott and Robin are driving around in a hearse, and they're driving around like a Pontiac Firebird or something. The chase ends when Scott kicks the custom-made coffin out of the back of the hearse, and it crashes into the car, and they have to pull over. So after this, the gang decides that they really got to get revenge on these kids, and Crip, he can't wait like for the rest of the gang to show up to the house. He wants to go in and like sleep next to Robin. So he goes into the house.
As one does, yeah.
Yeah, he takes his jacket off, and he goes to lay next to Robin, and he grabs her, and he flips her over, and it turns out, dude, she's been fucking stabbed in the throat. She's dead. And we're like, wow, this is nuts. Apparently it's been like 2 hours, and Crip hasn't come out of the house, and the rest of the gang shows up. And like, well, we gotta go in and find him. The gang leader sends Melvin, I think that's the name of the fat guy in. Silk sends in Tubbs. And Tubbs is like, I'm not going. And then the door swings open, and it's like a spooky ghost voice. And it's like, Melvin, come in. So he rides his bike up the stairs, and immediately he gets knocked off of his bike by a spooky apparition. And he also sees Crip hanging from the ceiling, dead. So then the rest of the gang goes in, and like they're split up over a couple floors. There's a guy named Stoney. He goes into the basement. Silk is doing whatever. Silk's girlfriend, Lady Punk, she goes up to the top floor and finds Melvin's decapitated head on top of this record player playing this old-timey 30s music. And she screams and Silk runs up the stairs, but he can't find her. So he opens this closet and he sees her. He sees her body sitting there holding her head in her lap and just like blood spurting out of her neck. And just as Silk is like about to pass out, we see what appears to be Tyler Walker. But it turns out none of this was spooky ghost stuff, and it was just like Scott and Robin playing a huge prank on the gang.
Because Scott, what's Scott studying? Well, he's in high school.
Theater.
Yeah, but he has like an interest in like special effects or something. That's the setup for this.
Yeah, and it's touched on very briefly at the very beginning of the movie, and never brought up again. And yeah, he's just like, and they've knocked out all these gang members with chloroform, and they've hidden them around the house and made like dummy bodies. And on Silk, they paste like this dinosaur penis prosthetic.
Like a chest burster.
Yeah.
But you're right, it looks a little phallic, and there's even a line about that.
Well, after all the gang members realize that they've been had, they're like, bah! Now we're really gonna get revenge. This is when the supernatural stuff comes back into the movie. So like a couple nights later, we don't know how long, Petey, who is Scott and Robin's black friend who works at the university's library, they're all hanging out in their house one night, and a pizza delivery guy shows up, and he's like, I got a pizza for this address. I know you didn't order any, but it's my last run of the night. Do you want it for $5? And
yeah, well, this scene was frustrating because at first it's like, we didn't order pizza, and then the pizza delivery guy's like, it must be those, frat guys playing a prank or something. But then they still decided to take the pizza, even though they know where it's from. There's a very good chance it's poisoned. This is frustrating.
Yeah, and then the pizza guy's been like paid off by the gang, and he sticks a wad of gum onto the door lock so they can't actually like close the door. And then he goes out and gets paid by the gang, and then they wait a bit. Like, I think Petey leaves. He goes outside, and he sees the gang. So he goes to run back into the house to tell his friends, but they just wind up fucking, like, running him over and killing this poor kid.
Yeah.
Yes, but Scott gets drugged with the Coke, I think, that came with the pizza. And when he wakes up, he's surrounded by the gang. They're, like, partying in his house with a motorcycle and a cool, like, light gun.
A little disco kind of.
Yeah. But Robin's tied up, and she's sitting on Crip's lap, and everybody's just, like, starting to split up, and they're gonna, like, beat the shit out of Scott or whatever. Everybody splits up in the house, and the fat biker, he's running over Tyler Walker's old love mannequin, which we see the ghost looking at it through the mirror, and then the mirror just explodes, and then all the lights go off. So Stoney, gang guy, he goes down to the basement to check out the breakers, and he gets killed when he's looking up the dumbwaiter shaft and talking to Lady Punk, and then the dumbwaiter just breaks and crushes his head. And like Lady Punk doesn't even realize what happened. The best one of these deaths, or one of my favorites, is Fat Biker. Yeah, it's Fat Biker Melvin.
This took too long.
It did.
It became funny almost.
Yeah, the ghost takes his motorcycle over, like possesses his motorcycle, and just like flips him off of the bike and then pins him to a wall and runs into him like 10 times. Like severely bruising his face and then like causing internal injuries to the point where he just vomits blood. But the absolute best death here is Silk, the gang leader.
Oh my god. Silk is Raymond Cruz, who plays, I think, Tuco from Breaking Bad. Wait, no, not Silk. No, I'm not thinking it's Silk. So how does Silk die? Remind me.
Oh yeah, well first off,
my favorite death is the electrocuted
yeah, because that's a good one, because I skipped over that one, yeah. So
yeah, that scene's amazing. Well, first of all, it's Charlie Spradling nude, which is always appreciated. So she's on top of him. And what does he reach for? He reaches for a lamp or something?
Well, what had happened was that this was set up earlier in the movie where, like, the mom wanted to, when they had just moved into the house, the mom wanted to use her heated blanket, but the cord was frayed. And there was no electricity in the house anyway, so the husband's like, don't worry about it, honey, we'll get you a new one or whatever.
So it's not even ghost-related. He just electrocuted himself. But yeah, so this is wonderful because He's being electrocuted.
And she's still on top riding him.
She's continuing to ride him. She thinks he's got feelings of ecstasy, but really he's being electrocuted to death. We have cutaways to his fried hand, which is like... He's got like...
charred black.
Yeah, it looks awesome. And then when she's done, she rolls over, and I thought she was... I guess she was electrocuted too. I thought she just climaxed, and then I thought she was going to roll over and freak out that he died, but I guess she died also.
Yeah, we don't know when she died specifically, but she died. But also,
if it was before or after she came.
we don't know when she was coming or going. But also, the ghost knocked over 2 beers that they had on the table onto the cord of the heated blanket.
Yeah, that's right.
But my favorite death is the gang leader Silk, where it looks like he's gonna kill Scott. I think he's got like an axe or a hatchet or something, and Scott's tied up. The ghost loads the dad's shotgun, and then throws it into Silk's hands. And then the police come into the house, and then the ghost forces him to point the shotgun at the police, which causes the police to shoot the gang leader. And he's like, "I'm not doing this, I can't stop." And then after he's been shot like a couple times by the police, he flips the shotgun around into his mouth and just pulls the trigger. And the ghost makes him kill himself.
Yeah, you're right. That's probably the best death. The effect of the brains bursting through the back of his head is pretty good.
And then the last gang, or the second last gang member, I guess, is Crip. And he's upstairs with Robin, who's been kind of like wandering around the house. He's dressed like Tyler Walker this whole time. He hangs himself after he recreates the mannequin murder-suicide that we saw in the beginning of the movie of Tyler Walker. And he doesn't actually stab Robin, he fake stabs her, and then he hangs himself. And that's it for the gang members. The only one that's still alive is Lady Gang Member, who's a normal person. And when we see her at the end of the movie, she's wearing normal
she's
people
kind
clothes.
of friends with him even, or she's friendly with him at least.
Yeah. And this is when she reveals to Scott that she's like, "Oh yeah, Crip was, Tyler Walker and your great aunt's illegitimate son, which is why he was drawn to the house." And then we get a weird dream sequence where Robin and Scott are in the car, and a zombie Crip stabs Robin in the arm, and Scott has to wake her up, and he's like, "Don't worry, it's okay. Crip's dead. He can't hurt you anymore. You're totally fine." And she goes, "Oh, that's a relief." And then the movie actually ends with, instead of seeing Tyler Walker's ghost in the mirror, now we see Crip's ghost in the mirror. He's haunting the house now, and then the mirror explodes. And the movie ends. That's it. That's Twice Dead. Patrick, I assume this is your first time seeing it?
Why do you assume? Was I not clear several times when I talked to you and told you
this is your first time seeing it? So
yes.
How did you like it?
I liked it. I didn't love it. I thought, like I said, I thought the supernatural elements of the movie weren't that good, but I thought this was an interesting structure for a haunted house movie, where most of the time the threat isn't the haunted house, it's these punks. It's like a fun punk revenge movie, and then just the ghosts get involved in the end to save the day. I thought that was kind of interesting and entertaining, and it's a way to make kind of lame supernatural ghost story stuff actually kind of interesting. I thought the last act of the movie, so pizza scene on, I thought was very entertaining. I thought the movie was a mess before we got there, but the payoff made everything worth it.
Yeah, I do agree. I don't think the movie was necessarily a mess. It was just kind of like a bog standard movie where not much was happening, and it was just kind of like a stupid B movie with a very weak plot. But I think you're right. From pizza scene onwards, I thought it was done really well. I enjoyed it a lot, and I laughed a lot.
Yeah, I don't know if I laughed that much. I laughed at the electrocution scene because I thought it was so stupid, and I thought it was stupid how long she kept going on top of him when he was clearly dying. I know that's a fun thing, and I think it was just they wanted to get as much nude Charlie Spradling as they could, which I can't say I blame them.
Yeah, they're like, "We'll pay you an extra $50.
I thought it was weird that, I guess she's dead now too. I'm like, wait, what is it? Wait, maybe she wasn't in ecstasy earlier. Maybe she was also dying.
But maybe she's just a bad actress.
Listen, she's not the best, but that's fine. I don't know. Listen, I think the director, Burt Dragon or whatever the fuck his name is like, listen, you're dying, but we got to make this look as much like a porno as we can, so you're gonna be excited. It's like, okay, whatever. I think she nailed it, but no, the movie is not great. It's not bad. It was unique. It did something different, whether you look at it as a fun twist on the haunted house genre or a fun twist on the youth crime, like youth gangster movie, like Class of 1984. Either way, it's a kind of a fun twist of genres or a mishmash of those two genres together. I will say, and I was thinking this, I did not know, you did the trivia, you told me that those two actors, Whitlow and whoever, the brother and sister, that they were dating. Mm-hmm. I did not know that. I was going to say, though, that their chemistry felt more boyfriend and girlfriend than brother and sister. And, it's because he's, like, protecting her from, like, other guys, and he doesn't want her to have sex with this guy. And it's like, that could be brother-sister, but something about it just felt boyfriend-girlfriend.
I was actually going to ask you that. I totally forgot, because I read that before I watched the movie. So the whole time I'm like, oh, yeah, they're acting like they genuinely like each other. You know what I mean? Like there's something actually going on there. And I didn't know if it was just me or whatever, but I'm glad to know that you kind of backed me up on that point without knowing it.
Yeah. So what did you think of the movie overall?
I liked it. I don't think it was a great movie, but it certainly wasn't bad. I was actually surprised at how well it turned out for being what it is. It was an interesting take.
What do you mean? How well it turned out for being what it is? What is it? In I guess is what do you mean?
Well, on paper, it sounds absolutely ridiculous. Two teens are terrorized by a gang and live in a haunted house, and then a spooky ghost helps them take out the gang.
It doesn't help them. It takes out the gang on its own. The kids don't really do anything. The last time the kids do something to kind of one up the gang is when they glue a alien penis on the guy's stomach, and that's like the last thing. Everything after that it's all ghosts.
I'm just surprised. Like, I think a lot of it was played pretty straight. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was definitely a B movie, but it didn't feel like there was no terrible acting in it. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing that made you roll your eyes and groan and be like, oh, fuck, this really is a B movie. You know
I actually thought some of the acting was decent. I thought Jonathan Chapin was good as Crip. He is not one of the strengths of Halloween 5, and believe me, that movie doesn't have a lot of strengths to speak of, but he was not one of them.
Well, and even like the parents in the movie, they were good.
Well, and they wrote them off as soon as they could.
Yeah, well, maybe because those two were like, I don't want to be in this fucking movie anymore. I don't want to shoot for 6 weeks. I've already been here for 3 days.
Oh, yeah, Brooke Bundy had to go meet her new daughter in Nightmare on Elm Street 4, the recasting. So, yeah, she was busy. That came out in 88, same year.
But I don't know. I think I just expected a lot less from this movie, and I really loved the supernatural intervention in the end. And even just like the dumb ways that the ghost helped Scott out throughout the movie, like starting his car and waking him up when his sister was being kidnapped. I don't know. Like, it was pretty alright. Will I watch it again? I don't know. But it's certainly not one of the worst movies we've covered on this podcast.
Yeah, I think what it is it's a somewhat lame ghost story that's enhanced by basically being a supplement to a different story that I thought was a little bit more interesting, if even a little dumber. Because it's kind of like, it's just, this gang doesn't like them and they want to one-up them. There's a little bit more to it because we get the twist at the very end, but you and I both agree, it's not a great movie. It's definitely more interesting than it might have been. Mm-hmm. I think it's more interesting than had it just been a straightforward haunted house movie. The haunted house was the B story.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Really, it was the B story, and I thought it made the A story stronger, or the A story made the B story stronger. I think both those things are true.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that.
So, Jim, which of these two films, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster or Twice Dead, do you prefer?
Ooh, I think I'd have to go with Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. Just because, who doesn't like watching idiots in rubber suits hitting each other for...
Hey, we don't know if they're idiots or not. They might be very intelligent people.
But yeah, I don't know. It was just fun to watch. Those types of monster movies, specifically the Godzilla ones, are always kind of funny and schlocky, and I like that. Again, I liked Twice Dead, but you can't beat a fucking flying three-headed dragon shooting lightning out of its mouth, tearing up
Not
a city.
even a film directed by a dragon.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, I prefer it. I think it's a good monster movie, good Godzilla movie. Not the best, one of the better ones. I thought the human plots were more interesting than I was expecting them to be. I thought the end fight was as satisfying as those tend to be. You know, I mentioned I wish we could have seen more of Ghidorah destruction to really hammer in how threatening he is, but I still think the film communicated that pretty well through the Prophet. I enjoy that movie quite a bit. It's a good B-plus Godzilla movie. You know, there's only one A-plus Godzilla movie. There's a few A's, A-minuses. Mothra vs. Godzilla is an A. Shin Godzilla is an A. This is a good B-plus.
This has been, I think, out of all the Godzilla movies other than the first one, this might be my favorite. Or maybe even like, what was the one where Godzilla fell into a pit? I really liked that.
That was King Kong vs. Godzilla. That's schlock. That's schlock, although Godzilla, for the most part, isn't schlock. They make King Kong schlock in that movie.
I really liked that one, too.
Anthropomorphize King Kong in that film. But yeah, Jim, how do you think this stacks up as a drive-in double feature? These two movies, Ghidorah, the Three-Headed Monster, followed by Twice Dead.
I think they stack up pretty well, because I think that they're both, pretty silly, really. But they're both played very seriously.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't think either films are as silly as you say they are. I think there's inherent silliness to any kind of kaiju movie with the giant rubber costumes. And then there's that one scene, which is very silly with the where Godzilla's swearing like a sailor, rejecting Mothra, apparently based on the translations. Yeah, and I don't think Twice Dead is that silly. But
there's a lot of silly things in it.
Oh, it's for me. It was really just the electrocution scene. I thought that scene was just
even just
absurd.
Like ridiculous things like fucking like.
I thought that scene would have been easier to take seriously if it was like an eighth of the length of it.
Yeah.
But again, they needed as much Charlie Spradling as they could, so I enjoyed it. But yeah, it was absurd.
Yeah, well, even stuff like riding a motorcycle into a house, running a motorcycle train on a mannequin.
That's classic punk stuff.
Having a ghost.
They're bad boys.
Having a ghost load a shotgun and throw it into the hands of a lead punk. Yeah. But I just think both were kind of silly, but they were played very straight. I guess that's really it. That's probably the only reason why I think it's good, because they both made me laugh, because I think that they're both silly.
Well, I'll one-up you then, because I think it's a good double feature as well, but specifically, I am highlighting the B stories. I think these are both films that the A story itself might not make these like great movies. I think the Ghidorah one makes it closer, but the B story enhances it. And here I'm referring to the A story with Twice Dead being the ghost story, because I think that's what it's really supposed to be. I think it's supposed to be a ghost story.
Yeah.
But I think the punks end up taking up a lot more time, and I think they're more interesting. In the B story with Ghidorah, it's not necessarily more interesting than the monster fighting, but it's interesting. This weird princess being possessed by a Venusian alien that doesn't have a body, and all that stuff is fun, and it's weird. But yeah, I think these movies are both decent movies within their genre, but they're made even better by the B stories going on. I think the punks elevate Twice Dead to be a slightly above average haunted house movie, and I think all the weird James Bond stuff, assassinating the princess being possessed by an alien, that makes Ghidorah, the Three-Headed Monster, stand out as a pretty above average Godzilla movie. I don't know if it's one of the 5 best, but it's probably one of the 10 best. I think it's a weirdly good double feature with those kind of aspects to them. They're very different movies overall, but I enjoyed those. I enjoyed those specific aspects to them.
It will play at our drive-in movie theater when we win the lottery and can make one.
Sure. And Jim, this is what we've got going on next week. Next week we have a guest, and it's a guest who has not been featured on this podcast yet, so that's exciting. But our 2 movies are Single White Female, the 90s classic, kind of. It's a popular movie. I don't know if it's any good. I've never seen it. And then a movie that I can personally vouch for, Stalked by My Doctor. Came out in 2015. It was a made-for-TV movie. Everything about it sounds bad until I tell you this. Eric Roberts plays the psychopathic doctor, and it's an amazing performance. I actually really enjoy this movie. I just kind of stumbled upon it once on Tubi. So yeah, that is a double feature of Single White Female and Stalked by My Doctor. So we are getting our first Eric Roberts appearance. The man made more movies than anybody, and we're about to see him. And in one of his best performances. I can't say that because I've seen less than 1% of the movies he's done, so I don't know if it's one of his best performances, but it's a good performance. So that will be maybe next week, maybe 2 weeks from now. I'm not really sure, but that's our next episode at any rate. Feel free to check out our Patreon. I know I mentioned the You Only Live Twice commentary track. That was our September release. We should be having 2 commentary tracks coming out in October. We'll see. Jim and I still have to discuss those, and then obviously you'll get early access to episodes when they're done and before they are going to be posted, and then also access to extended cuts of the episodes, so you can hear some things that were cut out to make them shorter and sometimes more coherent. So thanks for joining me, Jim, and thank you, listeners. We will see you next time.
Bye for now.